All right, the next video in this series is an exploration of the idea of using two numerical explanatory variables in the context of a multiple linear regression model. So when we're thinking about transitioning from simple linear regression to multiple linear regression, we're thinking about the possibility of adding multiple explanatory variables in our model. In the previous video, we talked about how we can use a categorical variable to give us two different lines or different lines based off of the groups included in the categorical variable. Here we're thinking about the possibility of including two different numerical explanatory variables. So here we're thinking about, well, if I have this relationship between average beauty score and course evaluation score, which we examined before, but I also have this relationship between professors' age and their course evaluation score, where I see that both of these have a moderate relationship. So why don't we combine both of these and see what kind of model we get if we allow for both of these variables to be inputs in our ability to explain what's going on in a course evaluation score. So then we can account for both the professor's age and their average beauty score together in the same model. So that's where we end up with this idea of the regression plane, which they introduce in the Modern Dive book. And let's break down this visualization because maybe at face value, it's a little bit overwhelming. So what we have is we're thinking about, because we have these two numerical explanatory variables, we have these variables on our x-axes, our x1 and our x2, and they're thinking about our response on our y-axis, so that's here. So we're thinking about visualizing our data in 3 dimensions. So that's where each of these points are. Instead of lying on a 2-dimensional xy plot, what they're now doing is they're lying in 3-dimensional space in their x1, x2, y coordinates. As we would expect for a regression line, we have points that are below our regression plane as well as points that are above our regression plane, because our regression plane is an approximation for this relationship that we see in these points plotted in 3-dimensional space. And this graph here, this color spectrum, that's not adding in a new explanatory variable. Instead, it's allowing for you to more easily visualize what are the values of your response variable. So we see that up here we have larger values of our evaluation score, and it kind of tapers down. So we can see that this is a downward sloping regression plane, and then these scores down here are going to have lower scores on average. So we have 4s down here and we have about 4.4s up here, and then from there we can see like what is this contributing to. So this is where we have larger values of average beauty are associated with these scores, but we also see that like the lowest of or the highest of these evaluation scores here in this sort of yellow zone is for these younger professors. So these professors in their 30s to 40s that are also have these higher average beauties. So this is one way that you can visualize both of these explanatory variables being included in your model. In the next tutorial, what I'll talk through is how we can use our familiar modeling techniques for producing visualizations and how we can tie those into adding both categorical variables as well as quantitative variables into our multiple linear regression.